the 5 strictest sexual bans of the medieval church. Imagine a world where your most private act, the very act of love, was policed by the most powerful institution on earth. A world where enjoying intimacy could damn your immortal soul to eternal fire. This was the crushing reality of the Middle Ages, where the Catholic Church didn't just govern your faith, it governed your bedroom. The pursuit of spiritual purity cast a shadow so vast and so cold that it made even the most natural human urges into the gravest of sins. Forget what you think you know about medieval life. The true horrors weren't always the dungeons or the plagues. They were the invisible chains of moral law. Today, we pull back the shroud on the forgotten doctrines of desire. We're plunging into the darkness to uncover the 5 strictest sexual bans of the medieval church. Prepare to be shocked by the rules that terrified an entire continent for 1,000 years. Before we descend into these forbidden laws, do me a favor. If you're fascinated by the dark side of history, hit that like button and subscribe right now. Don't miss our next chapter in the shadows. 1. The ban on holy days and penitential seasons. To the modern mind, the idea of a calendar dictating intimacy is absurd. But in the medieval era, the church claimed dominion over not just space, but time itself. This first ban wasn't just about forbidding sin, it was about sanctifying the very rhythm of life. The rule was simple, yet devastatingly restrictive. Thou shalt not engage in conjugal relations during holy days and penitential seasons. The faithful were expected to maintain continence, sexual abstinence, during certain mandatory periods. These periods included the entire 40 days of Lent, the preparation weeks leading up to Christmas, Advent, and frequently, the 3 days leading up to receiving the Eucharist. But the bans extended much further. Many dioceses added a total ban on all Sundays and often Wednesdays and Fridays, in memory of Christ's betrayal and crucifixion. They even included the entire periods of a woman's menstruation, pregnancy, and lactation, which could easily encompass the better part of a decade. The historical rationale. The Church taught that intercourse, even within the sacred confines of marriage, was a venial sin unless its sole intent was procreation. During times dedicated to prayer, fasting, and spiritual reflection, any indulgence in carnal pleasure, even the required act for childbearing, was a distraction and an offense to God's holiness. By denying the body, the soul was purified. This meant that for many devout couples, the periods available for sanctioned intimacy were drastically reduced, perhaps to fewer than half the days in a year. The consequence, this rule bred immense guilt. If a couple unintentionally broke the ban on a holy day, the sin was compounded. Priests used detailed questionnaires in confession, often using explicit penitentials, manuals of sin and prescribed penance, to determine the exact nature and timing of the transgression. The resulting penance could be severe: prolonged fasting, extensive prayer, or even public humiliation, turning the most private aspect of life into a public moral hazard. The fear was constant, the guilt pervasive. 2. The absolute prohibition of fornication and adultery. Marriage, the Church taught, was a sacrament, a reflection of the divine union between Christ and the Church. To violate it was not merely a social misstep, it was an act of blasphemy against God Himself. This brings us to the most obvious, yet most ruthlessly enforced ban: the absolute prohibition of all sexual activity outside the bounds of sacramental marriage. The sin of fornication Sex between unmarried individuals was grave enough. But the sin of adultery, sex involving a married person, was considered a catastrophe. It broke a covenant, confused legal lineage, and threatened the entire patriarchal social structure built upon the transfer of property through legitimate heirs. The legal and social fallout. Unlike many sins confessed and absolved in private, adultery often carried severe secular punishment. While the church handled the spiritual penance, local law stepped in with earthly retribution. Penalties varied wildly across Europe. A man might face a heavy fine or imprisonment, but a woman was often subjected to far crueler and more public humiliation. In some regions, she could be forced to wear distinctive clothing, have her hair shaved, or, in the most brutal examples, face corporal punishment or even execution in rare cases where the act was seen as a deliberate crime against the state's order. The doctrine of the double standard. Crucially, this ban showcased the era's deep misogyny. While the church officially condemned both parties, societal laws were almost always harsher on the woman. Her chastity was viewed as the property of her husband or father, and her transgression was seen as theft. Prostitution, though technically a sin and subject to moral condemnation, was often tolerated in many large cities as a necessary evil to protect virtuous women from the uncontrollable lust of men, a hypocrisy that further solidified the power imbalance. This ban was not just moral, it was the bedrock of medieval social control. 3. The ban on unnatural positions, the sin against nature. Now we delve into the realm of the truly bizarre, the rules that meticulously catalog the precise how of marital intimacy. If the goal of sex was solely procreation, then any act deviating from the natural order was immediately branded a sin against nature. This third strict ban was the prohibition of any sexual position deemed unnatural or lustful, even between a legally married husband and wife. Defining natural. For medieval theologians like Thomas Aquinas, the natural way was the position that most directly facilitated procreation, the missionary position. Any deviation was considered a search for mere pleasure, a descent into animalistic behavior, and therefore a mortal sin if committed knowingly and deliberately. The specific term used by the church was often vitium contra naturam, vice against nature. The role of penitentials. How did the church enforce this? Through the confessional. Priests were armed with penitential manuals, detailed handbooks that listed and categorized every conceivable sexual act and assigned a precise penance. These books were explicit, detailing forbidden positions, techniques, and even fantasies. For example, some manuals assigned 2 to 3 years of severe fasting for engaging in a position that did not offer the straightest road to the womb. This reveals the intense, almost clinical obsession of the clergy with controlling every facet of the human body, turning the confessional box into the most intrusive space in the medieval world. Hold that thought for a moment. If these rigid rules have shocked you into silence, show your appreciation for this deep dive into history. Take 1 second right now to smash the like button. It helps us keep uncovering these fascinating, forbidden truths. And if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe. Now, back to the ultimate spiritual contract. 4. Mandatory celibacy for the clergy. Our fourth ban separates the spiritual elite from the laity, but it came with its own immense spiritual and human cost. It is the rule of mandatory permanent celibacy for all members of the ordained clergy. This was not always the rule. In the early Middle Ages, married priests were common. However, by the 11th and 12th centuries, particularly solidified by the Gregorian reforms, the Church enforced celibacy with iron discipline. Priests were expected to embody Christ's purity and devote their entire lives and minds to their spiritual duties, unburdened by the earthly demands of a wife and children. The realpolitik of purity. While the stated reason was spiritual, the practical reasons were highly economic and political. If a priest married and had children, he would naturally seek to pass on church lands, titles, and wealth, which technically belonged to the church, to his legitimate heirs. By enforcing celibacy, the church ensured that its vast properties and influence remained within the institution, preventing a hereditary caste system from taking root within the clergy. The spiritual ban was, in effect, a massive financial control mechanism, the human cost and hypocrisy. Despite the harsh rules, human nature persisted. Throughout the medieval era, chronicles are filled with accounts of concubinage, priests living openly with women, and the secret existence of priests' children. While many priests suffered intense spiritual turmoil trying to maintain this impossible ideal, the church's response was often to ignore it until it became a public scandal, demonstrating a quiet internal tolerance for a situation the outward law rigorously forbade. This created a widespread, deeply entrenched hypocrisy at the very heart of the spiritual leadership. 5. The ban on lust, the sin of pleasure itself. We arrive at the most fundamental and all-encompassing ban, the core philosophical principle that fueled all the others. This final strict rule wasn't about a specific act or day, but about the very feeling itself, the absolute ban on the experience of sexual pleasure, the sin of luxuria, lust. The church's teaching was clear. The fall of man had corrupted the body, turning natural desires into dangerous appetites. Sexual pleasure was seen as the most potent evidence of this corruption. The medieval moral framework viewed the enjoyment of sex, even within marriage, as inherently sinful because it involved losing control to the passions of the flesh rather than remaining governed by pure reason. The doctrine of intention. This is what made the ban so terrifying. A married couple could have intercourse for the sanctioned purpose of procreation, but if either partner enjoyed the act too much, if the pleasure became an end in itself rather than a means to an end, they had committed a sin of luxuria. The act was pure, but the intention or the feeling was impure. It meant that even the most religiously observant couple could find themselves spiritually condemned by their own minds and bodies. The lasting legacy. This doctrine of luxuria permeated medieval art, literature, and psychology. It was the vice most often depicted in hellish scenes, with demons tormenting those who succumbed to carnal delight. This ban wasn't just a rule. It was a psychological weapon designed to create constant vigilance, forcing the faithful to live in a state of perpetual fear and self-examination, where the greatest danger was not outside their home, but lurking within their own hearts. The Middle Ages, often called the Age of Faith, was truly the age of fear. The 5 strictest sexual bans of the medieval church reveal a comprehensive system of control, economic, social, and most profoundly, psychological. These rules dictated when, where, how, and even why a person could touch another, turning human desire into a complex battlefield governed by theology. They remind us of the immense power institutions can wield over the most private aspects of human existence. Which of these 5 bands did you find the most shocking or the most revealing about the medieval mind? Let me know in the comments below. We love to hear your thoughts and continue the discussion. And if you want more deep dives into the hidden corners of history like this one, don't forget to hit subscribe and ring that notification bell. You've been watching 5-Point Historian, and we'll see you in the next chapter of history's dark secrets.